welcome to our special Good Friday session of our Christian Meditation Prayer Group here at St Mary's Church in Killarney. It's nice to welcome you to our service on this very special day, to this session of meditation, and also if you're following us on catch-up on the recording, you're also very welcome to join us, and we regard ourselves as all being gathered together here in one group at one time, in one place. So, as I say, welcome on this Good Friday, a day when we mark the one of the most important events in the Christian calendar, the day when Christ went to his death willingly, in order that he might secure the future of God's creation. And so, as we have been restricted ourselves because of the pandemic, we may feel more acutely some of the stresses and strains which Jesus would have experienced during that time of preparation and the build-up towards his being arrested and charged and accused and found guilty, and his walk to the cross. And so as we prepare for our meditation, I just want to mention that after the meditation there will be a short reflection upon the significance of Good Friday to our meditation practice. And I've been asked a question, so I will be offering an answer to the question before the reflection. So let us prepare for our meditation. We will close our eyes and relax the body, and then at the sound of the gong we will bring in our sacred word, our mantra, Maranatha, and we will hold that in our minds gently, and if it disappears we bring it back and don't much mind what happens. So let us close our eyes now and relax our body. I hope your meditation experience was a good one for you on this very special Good Friday session of our Christian meditation group. As I intimated at the beginning of the session, I was asked a question recently and I want to share my thinking on the question and an answer to it. In the past couple of sessions we've been looking at the fruit of the Spirit in Paul's letter to the church in Galatia in chapter 5. And we have been looking at the characteristic of gentleness. And the question that was asked to me was, how are we to know where the boundary lies between gentleness and indulgence? So first of all, we need to clarify what we mean by gentleness and indulgence. Of course, gentleness in the Oxford English Dictionary is classified as kindness and one or two other similar sorts of attributes. And indulgence, to indulge somebody, is therefore an excess of kindness. And this is the simple answer to the question, how do we know where the boundary lies? Because gentleness is a simple thing, if you will, how shall I say it, an understated sort of aspiration, and indulgence is an overstated, it's excessive, and therefore the former is appropriate and the latter is not. But we need to look at this a little bit more closely, because this actually underpins something very significant about this idea that Paul offers us of the fruit of the Spirit. Now, I want to ask you a question. The fruit of the tree is red and or green, is crisp, firm, sweet to the taste, and it is juicy. So then I ask you the question, what is the fruit? And of course, well, I hope you come to the conclusion it's an apple. And you will be right, because that's what I'm thinking about. But note, the fruit of the tree is a singular. This is a fruit, a singular object, and it has these qualities. The same is true of the fruit of the Spirit. It is a singular, and the qualities of it are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that is then a way into understanding what it is about the question that is significant. Although the person who posed the question, I don't think, was thinking in these terms, it's really helpful in understanding, because my answer to the question was that gentleness is not excessive. It is not excessive. So the fruit of the Spirit, then, these characteristics describe one object, one whole, if you will. And therefore we need to take them all in the round. You can't take an apple and talk about its colour and ignore everything else about it, nor its sweetness and ignore it, or its crispiness, whatever characteristic. You wouldn't ignore the rest of them. They're there, so you take them into account. And the whole thing describes the fruit. And so this idea of gentleness has associated with it all the other 8 qualities of the fruit of the Spirit. And the final quality is self-control. And this is the measure of lack of excessiveness, if you will. So gentleness has alongside it self-control, which is a lack of excessiveness. But there's also something slightly more, because when you look at the fruit of the Spirit, you begin to wonder why those 9 characteristics? Because elsewhere in the scriptures we're told that that a person of God has another attribute which isn't apparently covered by the qualities of the fruit of the Spirit, but actually it is there. And what I mean is that in the original language, in the Greek, the word we translate as gentleness has not just that aspect, but also an aspect of mild-manneredness, an aspect of humility. And humility is the capacity and the ability not to draw attention to oneself. And therefore, in the original language, the word we translate as gentleness actually means humility. And so in humility, we are not excessive, because that is pride. And it becomes much clearer then what is going on. And so gentleness does not veer into indulgence, because it is not excessive. We have self-control. So I'm going to hold off from developing our further thinking on this particular verse of Scripture until next week, because I want briefly to look at the way in which this Good Friday experience matters to us in our meditation practice. On Good Friday we celebrate, we mark the events that took place in Jerusalem some 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was taken into custody and falsely accused and convicted of the crime of blasphemy, for which the death penalty was sought. And so he's taken to the cross, and on the cross we know the story of the 7 last words of Christ and of his passing. And one of the things that are associated with this, if we look in St. John's Gospel, is the idea that is behind, the idea that underpins the way in which Jesus went to his death willingly. He says to his disciples, if any of you want to hold on to your life, you'll lose it. And if you lose your life for my sake, you will gain it for eternity. Now, this is a particularly familiar and well-known saying, but we can look at it a little bit more carefully, because herein lies a particular insight that relates to our meditation practice. In terms of the idea that Christ is offering to us, it's one of those things I've noticed that gurus and spiritual teachers who are well advanced on the journey of their enlightenment are want to be very obtuse. They want to be very ambiguous in the way that they express things. They say things that are odd, and they delight in doing it. You can tell that they really enjoy doing it, because they have an insight of a deep truth, and they're expressing it in as few words as possible. And the way they tend to do it is by the use of the capacity of language, of words to mean a number of things. And this is where we get our puns from. And I delight in puns. So I'm going to practice on you now. The idea here in this particular passage, and relates to Christ's crucifixion, is basically this: life is death, and death is life. So here we have a particularly odd and unclear form of phraseology, because the way it works is that the words are just their meaning. If I make a pun, you may ask me a question, and I can answer the question, but I can turn the meaning of the word you use into a subtly different part of its corpus of meaning. So I can change the word's meaning slightly from the one you meant and answer back in the other one. And that's what a pun is. So I can say to you, let me think. I can say to you that uncertainty does not exist. And you will say, Are you sure? And I will laugh. Uncertainty does not exist. Are you sure? Of course, you have to think for a moment to see what's going on with that, because the "are you sure" is an uncertainty and it can't exist. Or I can put it the other way round and I can say certainty does not exist. And you can say, "Are you sure?" And I can say, "Certainly." Because the word certainly is a certainty. And what I'm doing here is making a play on the nature and the capacity of the word. And it sends you in a direction you hadn't expected. And actually, what I've just said, what I've just offered you, is true. And this is what's going on in our meditation. Uncertainty and certainty do not exist. The only thing that exists is God. God is. And to be more specific, God is love. So in that context, if we try to think in terms of certainty and uncertainty, then we are using a different set of parameters. We are using weak foundations, because certainty, in what sense are you able to define it adequately, given what we know about human nature and life and the way of the universe? But the firm foundation, God is. Jesus said to Pilate, "I will bring you the truth." And Pilate said, "What is truth?" Of course, Jesus didn't answer him because he wasn't ready to hear it. So this idea then of the way in which we perceive, the way in which we define our words, the way in which we understand and assume our concepts, certainty and uncertainty, is fundamental to the experience of a meditation. So what we're talking about here is that if we approach our meditation on the basis of inadequate assumptions and slightly ambiguous or slightly off the true line of the meaning of a word, slightly variant to it, then we will veer off into areas where there is no clarity and no capacity for conclusion, for solution. But if we stick with God, then we know we're on safe ground, because God is. So this idea then is part of our meditation practice. What we are doing, in effect, is whittling away at our presumptions and our assumptions about our understanding of things. We're whittling away at it, not in the sense of a lawnmower that clips away at the grass, because the grass just grows again underneath, and we have to go and do it again. That would be an endless meditation that didn't get anywhere. What we're doing is with a turf shovel, and we're digging under the roots of the grass and lifting the turf off, and underneath is the bedrock and is the strata, the actuality, that is the permanence, if you will. And so our meditation shouldn't act like a lawnmower, it should act like a turf shovel, and taking up that layer of variability, that layer of lack of permanence, and that layer of vagary of assumption. And as we do that, we then find that we approach clarity. And clarity is, when I ask you at the beginning of the meditation to close your eyes and relax the body, that's a specific thing about the muscles. We relax the muscles so that we may be ready and still for the meditation. But when we go into our mind and we use the mantra, the sacred word, Maranatha, what we're trying to do there is to relax the mind so that the thoughts will all seep down. They're not going to pop up like little blades of grass. What they're going to do is be sliced out like a turf shovel, so that the thoughts are disappearing, because the thoughts are coming from variabilities. Yeah? And underneath that, we're looking for the stillness in the mind where we find the capacity to be aware we become aware of everything in us and around us. We become aware of our pulse, our breathing, our relaxing muscles, about the noises and sounds of the outside. We don't look at them to think, what are they? We're just aware of them. And that's all that we need. And in that state, we become much more susceptible to being aware of the presence of God within us and around us. So this idea that Christ presents to us of losing our lives as he did in order to gain it as he did is the cycle of the meditation. And we live our own crucifixion each time we go into the meditation. That is a tiny crucifixion within us, in our humanity, in our being, that helps us to grow into the stature of Christ and complete our creation as God intended. So I bless you this Easter weekend. May the coming days be fruitful to you, and I hope that as the temperature starts to drop again, it's been a fabulous day today. As the temperature starts to drop on Easter Sunday and Monday, you will still find the warmth of your meditation and of your experience of Easter to be a blessing to you. So stay safe and stay well.